Okay, so welcome back. I'm giving the microphone back to Chulhi to continue the discussion on the interim ITUT study group 12 meeting.
Thank you very much. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So now we move to work item J.NoRef. So this is the contents of these PPT files. So now we have 4 ILGs and 7 proponents. We'll very briefly review the key factors of test plan. And there are some issues to be determined. First one is the role of ILG, and there are some other small details. And for the monthly audio call, next one is June 12, and in July is July 15. And we, as study group 12, will have a meeting in September from, I think, is from 9 to 18. So we do not know exact time and date. So once we have the schedule, you can find the meeting schedule from the ITU website. So this is the list of ILGs and proponent. So there are 4 labs applied for ILGs: AGH universities, IIT, Vedodara of India, RISE from Sweden, and the Bath Tech London's United Kingdoms. And we have 7 proponents: Academy of Broadcasting Planning from China, and Accept TV, France, InnoWireless, Korea, NTIA's, ITS, United States, TU Ilmenau, Germany, University of the Poitiers, France, and Yonsei Universities. I understand that some of our proponents and ILGs were not able to join these meetings, but we had 2 previous meetings. Hopefully that we can make some progress today. So this NR test, we narrowed the scope, only Full HD, and the TV monitors, PC monitors, and mobile display can be used for subjective test. And PVS duration is just 5 seconds. And codec, we listed 5 codecs, and the bit rate is 0.1 to 30 megabps. And also camera impairment also included. And subjective test method, ACR, and HR's design. The number of PVS of subjective test should exceed 200, number of viewers 24. Our subject may skip a clip. Nevertheless, the clip will be used for data analysis. So we have 2 tracks. The one NL models only handles coding artifact. And the second one is that coding artifact and camera impairments. So proponent may choose to submit 2 separate models, or they can submit a single model to handle both tracks. So in the recommendation, NL model will have different scope, coding artifact only, and the coding artifact include the downscaling and upscaling, and coding artifact and camera impairment. Still, we need to decide how to divide the subjective test between the 2 tracks and also for display type. For example, for TV, the video should be horizontal landscape, but on the other hand, on the mobile phone, it will be vertical. So we have to decide how to divide the subjective test. That is one of the agenda today. and the release of subjective and objective data. Subjective data and MOS score and the official data analysis will be made public so everyone can check the result. Objective data of a winning model will be published, and objective data of all other models will not be released unless the proponent requests that their data is released. And the ownership of a subjective test is the lab who actually create the PVS and perform subjective test. So they can decide how to distribute or share their data set. And submission of executable models. And proponent may submit one model in each tracks and should perform one subjective test. And proponent may submit additional subjective test if the proposal is approved by the ILG and other proponent. And this is another topics we need to decide today, hopefully. So this is one of the key issues today. So we need to decide the roles of ILG and some compensation or benefit for them. So the role of ILGs includes the design and HRC, design HRC or review HRC designs. And I think this is most critical. This design, select a source and assign them to HRC. So this will make the verification independent. Then make some decisions, for example, some admissibility, so other unforeseen problems. So benefit of ILG include fee or access to the subjective data and PVS so they can be used for other purpose after the successful completion of JDAN-NOREF. And possible research collaboration using the subjective data set and PVS. For example, it may be possible to publish academic paper together. So here are some main the main task during validations. And test plan says that the PVS generation and subjective test should be done by proponents. So source preparations, which can be done by proponent, so they just propose candidate source, which will be 5 seconds, and ILG may choose. And also HRC design, proponent may submit candidate HRC design, then ILG can choose the HRC and pairing them with the source. So by doing so, that we'll have some independent verification. So sharing the subjective and subjective data set, which include the PVS and subjective scores, because we made it clear that the lab who performed the subjective test owned the data. So we did some asking each proponent whether they are willing to share their data with ILG. And here is the final response. And in all of them said yes. And NTIA, they said that they'll make it the data public. So anyone can use their data. And other proponents agreed that they are willing to share their subjective data, which can be used for other purpose after the completion of these recommendations. So this one was confirmed with their company. Why?
Tulhi?
Yes,
Sorry
please.
to interrupt. I see a hand raised here by Balu.
Oh, okay, please.
Hey,
Yes,
Julie.
please.
Thanks for putting this together. We had previously proposed YouTube to be a proponent of this. I don't see the name here, but we'd like to be still, if it is open, to be considered. And we have the prepared PVS also as part of this proposal ready to go. So let me know what it takes to be, if it is still open. And if it is not, what are the next steps?
Oh, what do you mean you want to join as ILG or proponents?
Proponent.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. You missed the deadline. The call for proponent is sent out last January, and the deadline was, I think, March 5th. So you're from YouTube, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh.
Yes. And I think we tried connecting late last year, earlier this year, but I forget now. And I'm sorry we missed the deadline. So.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure that I'll check with ITA. Also, I definitely, I think if the proposal is to be accepted, I think at least all the proponents should agree. So I'll check with ILG, the IT. It's kind of difficult situations, but I'll check what I can do. But I cannot promise anything at the moment, but I'll check. I think at the moment, I need to consult with ITU, and also I need permission from all the proponents at the least.
Yeah, that sounds good. It was probably it was a miscommunication, probably it was a dropped communication, but oops. But let us know what the next steps are. Happy to work with you to go, to go to the next steps. And if it requires, we can seek permission. If it is not, we could probably help from the sidelines.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Oh, that's very unfortunate because I think this information sent out in the various route. Martin take some effort to send out all the invitation to all the every possible candidate groups. But I'll check with Martin and the other proponents.
Actually, it's a name from University of West of Scotland, and I would like to join as ILG if still we can. If not, then fine as well.
Oh, okay. Well, also this ILG might be a little bit less tricky, but still I think you both missed the deadlines. So I think I need to consult with ITU and other proponents. But would you kindly send your information to me by email?
Yes, I will do this one. No.
So this is my email address. Oh, I'll do the.
No, I was actually, could you paste the email address in the Zoom chat?
Yeah, I just did.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I cannot promise anything at the moment. Please understand.
Actually, I think also Margaret raised her hand to.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Julie. I suggest you get responses from the current proponents in ILG to these two organizations and an answer on whether they could, if they are accepted, if they could share their data set with the ILG. I think that might help you more clearly state the situation.
But unfortunately, I think we do not have all the proponents at the moment. I think it might be better to explain the situation to them and get some response.
Okay, well, thank you.
So source and PBS, 1080. And also, I think this one we did not discuss. This one will be discussed later, but think about it. Are we going to allow interested source video or not? This one will be discussed later. Symmetric, RMSE, and Pearson. And viewing distance and condition in accordance with P.910 or BT500. TV monitor 1.5 to 3, H is height, PC monitor 1.5 to 3, mobile phone 4 to 5 height. So color space 4 to 2 or 4 to 0s. And frame rate, I think it was 24, 23, something like this. Oh yeah, this is candidate. So this is the decision. Pre-processing is allowed. Schedule, we had some updated schedules, but this one still we need to take a look at some additional issues. So this schedule revision is another agenda item. So this is to be determined. So ILG roles, the page is 17 of this PPT file, and subjective test assignment. At the moment, total number of subjective tests is 7. So how do we divide this one? And also we have TV or PC or mobile phone. So we have to decide 7 tests between these categories. So I'd like to know if there is any proponent willing to offer more than 1 subjective test. So we can consider them. And I think as the test plan dictate, that proposal should be approved by all the proponents and IRGs. At least I think the proponents. And also the uncompressed file format, we need to be more specific about this and also need some test vectors. And also, since this is the NRs, I hope there's no failure, but if any model fails for some PBS, we have to design how to handle those cases. And model submission method, so at the moment, just vaguely said ITU or ILG, so we need to specify the exact email address. And interest source, are we going to allow this one or not? And test design, the HRC design guidance. So do you want some lawfully uniform mode distribution? And subjective test guidance and randomization. Do we want it for each viewer or minimum number of randomization groups? And also we have these player issues for these randomizations. And also we need to review schedules. And also we need to thoroughly review the test plans. So I think some issues can be better solved before model submission, because after the model submission, everything can be complicated. So I think if we have maybe not today, not these meetings, I think we need to review the test plan thoroughly so that we can avoid any potential problems. So any other items I missed here which need to be determined? Okay, so now let's move to the IT roles.
Chulhi, I have one suggestion to add to the list.
Okay, please.
So this is just slightly different. I am hoping to hire out some videographer to create sequences that have both a camera impairment and compression that's happening inside the camera. And I'm wanting that to be, look, it's currently listed that the HRC will be chosen by the ILG. And in this case, I would need to give the instructions to the company well ahead of model submission, potentially. So I was hoping for some agreement that that sort of a situation would be acceptable, to create and submit sequences that already have an assigned HRC.
Is this HRC or just the PBS?
Well, both. It's a source, but that already has compression suitable to be a specific HRC, but straight from the camera. So
are you saying that you are simulating camera impairment?
no, with just have the camera pick a compression bit rate according to the list of acceptable HRCs.
Oh, okay, I see.
Margaret and Julie, this is Yanni. If I may suggest, Margaret, this is a valid, I can say, request. My experience, I cannot say that I have tested every possible phone today, is the most important cameras, I think, in the future are mobile phone cameras. And really, if we talk about non-mobile phone cameras, I would say the level of distortions, both on the capture side and the compression side you mentioned, Margaret, are so low that we can decide either to include them or not include them. But in my opinion, if we need to bucket content today, definitely the most dominant bucket would be the ones captured by a typical mobile phone. And again, my experience on the typical mobile phone is that the compression artifacts of 2025 phones are really so low that really cannot affect as much as the capture impairment. So I'm not against having actual phones capture with both camera and compression impairments, but my feeling is that one will overwhelm the other. And if we all agree on this, again, this is just my opinion, I would like to hear from the bigger group, then perhaps calling the camera capture just camera impairment, even though you understand there is a compression impairment there, but because the typical compression rates or bit rates, let's call them, from a camera is way higher, the bit rate, than the typical transcoding that happens after it, which is dominating. I would say when I think about compression artifacts, I really think about what follows after camera capture. But again, I'm open to maybe have the group weigh in. Do we really want to have the physical camera and experiment with different settings that perhaps would bring that bitrate lower, and therefore have a class, as Margaret said, where there is both a camera impairment, which is inevitable the moment you have a camera, plus the inherent compression happening in the camera? Or would you rather call that type of capture just camera impairment and maybe then add to it the typical compression artifact that happens because of transcoding?
Well, I think as I hear Margaret's proposal, I think that would be admissible because proponent may submit candidate source or PBS, and it will be ILGs that will decide which one will be used in the test. So I think all proponent is allowed to submit candidate source or PBS, and it will be ILG which one will be used in the validation test. That's my understanding.
So in other words, are we agreeing there's going to be 3 broad classes of sources? Ones without camera impairments, but obviously then with compression artifacts. One with camera impairments, but no compression artifacts. And the third one with camera impairments and compression artifacts. Is that really the proposal here?
No, I think, well, as Margaret says, that sometimes the camera video encoding might be set to 1 megabps for videos, and in the high end, maybe 5 megabps. So after that, you may apply transcodings for actually streamings. Their quality might be different. Well, if we are dealing with some full reference, that can be a problem. But here we are dealing with NL method. So I think NL method do not care how the impairment occurred. So I think basically the NL method should be able to tell that, should be able to distinguish all such impairment, because we cannot require that to use this NL method of recommendation. The original sequence should be encoded at, for example, above 5 megabps. Because if we meet that requirement, the scope of this recommendation will be reduced.
I understand, but again, my only question is, yes, what will be produced as PVSs is obviously going to include everything. Is this going to be a source component? So in other words, do we accept that the source, or is going to be an HRC variable where we introduce compression? That's really my question. And by the way, my key point here is that I do not know of a camera that you can actually set 1 megabit today. Even if I want to try to capture video at 1 megabit, I do not know of a phone. Maybe 5 or 6 years back, yes, there probably were some phones. But as far as I know, modern video capture today is upwards of 10 megabits. And that's really where I would like to say, if we talk about true sources before they undergo an HRC, I believe the true sources, or the way I understand the sources, are the camera impairments are present there. And when it comes to HRCs is where I think the compression parameters come in. That is how I feel is the modern, I can say the most probable pipeline today. But if we think that we can enlarge the scope and say, no, we want to include, for example, 10-year-old videos that were captured with a camera that had 1 megabit, I'm perfectly fine. But I think we need to clearly separate whether the compression artifacts are part of the source or part of the HRC.
Oh, okay. Okay. So we need to talk about this one a little bit more then. So what kind, I think, what kind of artifact are we going to allow in this experiment?
Thank you, Julie and Yanis, for delving deeper into that issue. Like Yanis, I just want clarification before I ask videographers to go and do this task for me.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments or any missing items, missing important items? Okay, so then let's move to page 17. Okay, Cheryl, after the last audio course, did you have some discussion among IRGs, candidate IRGs?
No, we have not had the time to have a meeting.
Oh, okay. So I think during the last meeting, where this test requires that each proponent should submit at least one subjective test. So also I think that the compensation for IRG could be free, but unfortunately some organizations said that it may not be easy to make payment to outside the organization. So, but we need to respect some respect IRG. So I think we need to decide in some ways how to compensate the effort of IRGs. So I think at the moment, the good news is that all labs, all proponents got permission from their company to share their data. So is this good enough or do we need still more? But unfortunately, I think ILG is only Cheryl, you are here, or how about the? Let's see.
I am the only ILG that is present here.
Oh, okay.
So
Well, still, I think then we have to think about this one. Hopefully that we can agree some terms.
or sorry. Yeah, please.
I thought I saw
Show the
88.
candidate the ILG.
Chulhi, could you go back to the ILG list?
Yes, yeah, Nikolai is also there. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry,
And I briefly saw earlier Matthew Karnek from Accept TV. I'm not sure if he's still there. And we have Margaret.
but they are not.
Oh, sorry, I'm talking about,
So
sorry, I'm
if we
misleading
have
here. My bad.
Pramit or Vittorio online.
My apologies, I was reading the proponent list here, sorry.
I mean, my gut feeling is that it will be very hard to get any compensation in money from this effort, and if the proponent should really pay for the work that the ILG is doing, I'm not sure they would like to do it, because so I think it would be on the basis that the ILG is happy with doing the work for these possibilities of doing publication and doing it on their own research funding.
By the way, Chulhi, I think you reversed the order. Proponent is ILG's name.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, Sal, you were saying that it's very difficult to get the funding.
No, I was saying that, I mean, it will be a really complex task to get actual payment from the proponent to the ILG. I mean, we tried before to have pairs of proponent paying directly to one of the ILG, and I guess that works. At least for us, that didn't in a way at all covered the cost for the work that we did. So if we are really going to invoice based on the cost of the work we are putting in, I don't think the proponent would like to pay that.
So your point is that there can be invoicing, there can be in contract, but proponents somehow cannot pay the money. It's not like there is any contract issue.
I would be happy if they would pay me for doing the work. I don't misunderstand me, but I think the setup is in a way that and it will be a difficult task to set up the payment system for this, and therefore I think for making the project continue, I think it would be up to the ILGs to decide if they can do it with the possibility of making academic papers out of it. So on that would be the Exactly. What they get out of it.
I see. So the
So that's
so
my
the idea is to
suggestion.
have ILGs collaborate in the expectation of publishing a paper, for example, the academic value rather than the monetary value, correct?
Yes, that's and well, maybe David, if you could comment.
Well, I think definitely, I hope. Yeah, I think for the academic paper, I think definitely we can use this data set at least to evaluate some NL method. And there are many potential areas that this data set can be used because this is a new data set and never been used to train any models. So I think this data set can be useful for some research and some papers. But I think the paper, in particular, good journal papers, we cannot guarantee that they will be accepted or not. But I think just for the reference, I think if ITT, I think your question 14, we had the PNET phase 2s. And out of their effort, I think Alex led the research paper, which was published in the IEEE Access. I think they listed how many, I'm not sure. There's several, definitely more than 10 papers who actively contribute to the project. So there are good possibility that we can publish some paper out of this project. But that still, I agree that there is a still possibility because research paper, particularly journal paper, there is no guarantee.
Here is David. Mikołaj is not here, but he asked me to let's say monitor this this effort. And I think that we should think about kind of compensation for example for subjects in this project. Yes, because it's quite complicated sometimes to cover these costs. Maybe proponents can cover this kind of cost.
Okay, so I think looks like this is still open questions. So yes, please.
Surely, Patrick speaking. I think on
Yes,
our side, we could be ILG too, and because we have the capability to do that. But I think what Shell raised is very important. With that clear conditions on how the proponent will support this effort, it's very difficult to be committed. I understand that, yes, you cannot promise that you will have a paper or something, but nowadays we can also, it's a matter of visibility of the data set, and what you propose surely makes sense, I think, because actually this is a valuable data set and for the community. I don't think we cannot guarantee, right, the publication on that, but we don't care much because these days there are many ways to share data set with DOI, like a platform like Zenodo or other offer a DOI possibility, so you can always get coded and cited for this effort. So I think I don't see that as a problem. I think what is mostly important to discuss is how proponents are able to support financially the effort, and as Shell mentioned, probably some of the ILG will lose money when it's. But yes, you can compensate with this data set sharing and visibility. Nevertheless, it has to be discussed quite clearly. What are the conditions? What will be open actually for the community? Because you know it turned out like in previous test plan, we not necessarily share everything, right? Because one thing which is pretty unfair for proponents is that suppose you have a good model and then people have access to the entire data set that was not available for the proponents, then you can easily come up with a new model overtrained or overfitted on the release data set, and then it ruins a bit the effort of the proponents. In other words, proponents will work a bit blindly with this, while once you release the data, other people from the community will have access to some data that the proponent didn't have. So if we don't clarify that, I think this is too gray, and it's difficult as a ILG to be committed, and we need to discuss that. And frankly speaking, because these questions were not really addressed so carefully, according to me, so far, it prevents us a bit to be committed in that effort. I think this deserves a clear discussion.
I just want to be cognizant that Margaret has her hand up for quite some time.
Thank you. I would like to add this as another issue to be discussed, and that is specifically to ask proponents what restrictions they would have around paying ILG. We have a known list of either 4 or 6 countries, and we can ask proponents, could they pay labs in those countries? What would be their monetary limits on paying? And are there any other restrictions, like the contract needs to specify certain terms? And I believe we have enough time that we could ask each of the proponents to investigate that and report back to us. Also, I agree with everything Shell said. Generally speaking, it is difficult to ask for sufficient compensation. And so as we're making the decisions to clarify, we need to limit what is being asked of ILG. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I think also need to I think think about it. This is technically the ITU do not need of a supervision from the ILG. For example, all the as far as I know, all the recommendations, for example, from question 14, was done without involvement of ILGs. And it was all the proponent after their model submissions, they decide the source and HRC combination after that. But with ILG, I think it would be much better to have this kind of independent verifications. So also, I think in the test plan, we require that each proponent to submit subjective test, which is the most that I think that can be very expensive for some company or countries. So we need to consider that if there is some unexpected problems for the proponent, I think we need to check with each proponent what is their opinion on these issues. But also, I say that in the previous case, I think we made payment to ILG, and the ILG did, I think, in HDTV, it was all the ILG do the subjective test at the time, if I remember correctly. So these times the subjective test is now moved to proponent. So I think we need to check with the proponent. We have to be careful to make some substantial change at the moment. But I think that is still a possibility that if the proposal is agreeable to the proponent. So I think at this point, I think it would be a significant change. For example, it'll be the ILG who do the subjective test, then there can be substantial payment, which may not be acceptable to some proponents. So I think we need to check with this one other proponent, and we'll have some opinion. Any other comments on these issues?
Truly, just one final comment. I had not thought that the ILG were necessarily doing any subjective testing, but even the tasks of choosing sources and HRCs, that can be time consuming and expensive in itself. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, that's a good point.
Yeah, I also have a comment. Sorry, I was not raising my hand, but sometimes that's not so well seen anyways. Alex Rake speaking. Can you hear me well?
Yes, yes.
Okay, super, yeah. Yeah, in Peanuts phase 2, we didn't have ILGs. I'm not suggesting we shouldn't have any, right? But I think that it also went okay, right? Because we had this kind of very clean separation of suggesting SRCs and HRCs and then basically applying them, right? So we had different task forces for that. There was also a very clear separation. At the time, we had some training sequences because we wanted to make sure that the models would be achieving a certain quality. Now there are, of course, quite a few databases out there, so maybe we don't need any training databases here, and we also didn't specify to have those. But at the time, when we were running for Peanuts phase 2, so what is now P1204, I pasted it also in the chat, the reference that you mentioned, Chuhi. I think that the approach also worked, right? And I think what is really a very key issue, regardless of whether we have an ILG or not, I think also we as proponents, we would be very keen on actually having those data to be published, right? I think it is actually really pivotal that some large fraction of this would become open source. That was actually a bit of a problem that we created in Peanuts phase 2 because we did not perfectly determine this when we were actually preparing all this. And then in the end, we had a bit of discussion, you know, of what of the data would be published and so on. And it was because we didn't properly, you know, address it in prior, right? But I think it is a bit of also a topic which is a bit, you know, unrelated to the ILG scene, right? Because the proponents would be running the test, as far as we have now said, right? And so ultimately, each proponent owns their test, right? That was at least what we did in phase 2, because they paid the subjects and so on. And I think it would be good to have some sort of good agreement and good kind of regulation on how do we deal with the outcome of those tests once the J.NOREF standard is out, of course.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, I think we need some discussion among the proponents and also discussion from the ILGs. And this issue of late applications.
So sorry,
And,
it's maybe a bit of a weird moment. Can I make another comment, please?
yes, please.
Since I see my name here, right, I may need to announce this now. It's a bit of a strange moment, maybe, but we would like to rename our proponent group project because I will be moving to another university, and
okay.
And it would be a collaboration between 2 universities. Then I hope that's okay, right? But I think it is good to do it now in this interim meeting and not, you know, do it offline and then we have to seek permission of changing our proponent name, right?
I think that is not a problem at this for me.
Okay.
You can send me the name by email.
Yeah, sure. I will do this. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, so still I think we need to discuss about on these issues. I think it's much better to have ILG involved in these work items. But also I think we need to make sure that their effort is compensated. So I think we'll discuss on the issues among proponents and ILGs. So hopefully we can come to some conclusion in June or July. So any other comments on these issues ILG rules. Okay, so otherwise we can move to the other topics. So it's still TBD. So how do you want to divide subjective test? For example, assuming that we have a 7 proponent, 4 and 3. And how about this one? Any proposal? This is just rough proposal, so it doesn't mean anything at the moment. For example, we can do either 5 or 6 or 1 or 2. Any comments? Because we cannot combine vertical and landscape together in the same test.
This is Yanni. I may be confused here, but these are sources. The first are sources, right?
No. We have 7 subjective tests because at the moment we have 7 proponents. So 7 each proponent will perform subjective test. So the subjective test can be used for camera impairment, no camera, the encoding only, and encoding and camera impairment. So how do you want to assign subjective test? So I think one possible division is that we assign 4 subjective tests for encoding only and 3 subjective tests for camera, the encoding plus camera impairments.
I will continue, but I see Margaret raising her hand. Margaret?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So personally, I'm more interested in the with camera impairments than without. And I suspect there's similar opinions one way or the other among proponents. This might be a question better to ask when the proponents are there. And that is, what types of source are they intending to contribute? And what type of test are they more comfortable doing on a mobile display or PC television? So other than that, I mean, I really think this is not an issue we should try to decide without a larger fraction of proponents. Thank you.
Okay, so you don't have any numbers, candidate numbers?
Personally, I would like to see a higher, slightly, if we have to split, slightly higher on camera impairments, but I'm hoping to do more than one subjective test, which would even it out, and we might get 2 more proponents, which would even it out. So no, I'm afraid I really don't. On PC versus mobile display, I think that's where we might, actually on both of these issues, we might get information from industry who's at this meeting, but won't be in later discussions, what they think is the more interesting use case, and write that down instead.
Well, this kind of decision can be sensitive as the deadline approach. So this one has to come in as soon as possible.
Okay, very good point, Julie.
Margaret, if I may chime in here, and again, I apologize if I see things differently. From my opinion, this is more like a multiplicative matrix. Let me explain my reasoning here. No camera and camera create a pool, in my opinion, of sources. Then TV or mobile is really what is affecting the subjective testing. So I can clearly understand how you want to split along, okay, let's do, I don't know, 3 tests on TV, 4 tests on mobile. But even if you decide to do just one subjective test that will cover everything. For me, it makes more sense to split that multiplicative matrix and say I have 100 sources, I have two devices, so I'm gonna get 200 quote unquote votes, then I'm gonna do a split on a non-overlapping sets, or maybe overlapping sets, so you can have some calibration. So I don't quite understand why a subjective test should be only camera and another subjective test that will have only camera end. I understand that the models will be different, but the subjective test can be used as you wish after the tests are conducted. So the way I see it, I see the TBD there dividing between the two tracks and horizontal, vertical, but still I don't understand why then camera and no camera impairments need to be mutually exclusive when it comes to conductive subjective experiments. Thank you.
No, it's not mutually exclusive. One subjective test cannot have camera impairment because we have two tracks in the final recommendations. One model will just measure encodings, the artifact, and the other one measure encoding artifact plus camera impairment. So to evaluate NL model without camera impairment, we need subjective test without camera impairment.
I'm with you, but my question is, if I have a subjective test, why cannot I use half of the ratings for my model, which is with, and somebody who does without use the other half? So in other words, why should conducting the subjective test be tied up to a model when you can take the results and split them? This is coming from sources with, this without, so use it for your model, either building or validation or testing or whatever you want to do.
Oh, okay. So you are proposing completely new analysis method. So you are taking some data from the one test and combine them from the another test.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, again, I'm not a proponent. We are not a proponent or an ILG. So you can just take this opinion and discard it. But all I'm trying to understand is what is the utility of isolating and say only camera objective or only camera impairments will be sources and only TV will be the viewing environment versus a sparse design where you pick randomly or semi-randomly and combination of the two. And then after you collect the data, you split them again and say, these are now, the subset is for you who are a proponent of, say, model one. Margaret?
Okay, so in the higher sense, Yanis, I agree that could definitely be done. I have no objections. But to speak on behalf of the other viewpoint, part of the issue is that a subjective test focusing on camera impairments might not have any matrix design at all. Each of the source sequences could be a completely unique stimuli from a different camera in a different setting. And the coding only data sets are much more likely to have a full matrix. In prior validation tests, that's the preferred design for such an experiment.
Thank you, Margaret. Again, I leave it back to Chulhi to continue the discussion. So again, feel free to move forward with the current proposal.
Yes. Well, I think if you take your proposal, I think also then we have to go back to the evaluation procedure. So can be so I think we need some rough numbers for this one. Otherwise, if we just delay these decisions, it might be more difficult because we cannot make a decision in September and the deadline is in November.
Chulhi, in that case, I would propose a fairly even split between camera impairments and no camera impairments.
So it's either 3-4 or 4-3.
Either way.
Okay.
And personally, I would suggest more of the TV PC tests than the mobile, just because the mobile tests are slightly more difficult to run. I think we might, more of proponents who are likely to be willing to do the PC tests.
Yeah, and sorry, it's apparently hard to see my hand raised. I agree with Margaret, and I also think that slightly more subtle differences are, of course, better observable on TV, PC than on mobile, right? So I think it is, if we really want to assess the quality of algorithms, I think it is, the mobile is more like double checking how well it actually fits to tests on mobiles, right?
So could you give us some numbers? Any number?
5 to 2 maybe in this case, or something like this, and
2 and 5, like this.
And then maybe for the no camera impairments, I really second your comment, Margaret, that this matrix design is relevant. I also think, you know, we have been trying to get a no reference model for just coding impairments for ages. I know there are now really good models out there, right? DNN-based models, but nothing standardized, right? So I think if we have just a standard that can do coding related impairments without much bad camera stuff, you know, then that's also a really good achievement, right? So I also think that it would be good to keep the numbers relatively similar. It's a bit of a pity we don't have 8 proponents, right? Or 8 subjective tests and split this in 4-4, right? Because I also see it would be nice to have the number the same, basically.
So something like this. This is not final.
That looks wonderful, Julie.
I agree.
So even in this case, should I add the 1+ here?
Yes.
So any proponent offering more than one subjective test?
Julie, you can put NTIA ITS down.
Oh, so you're proposing 2?
Yes. I mean, I could make one giant test, but I think it would be better to do 2 with slightly different designs and goals.
Yes.
Hey, Chulhi, there's a question in the room. This is Balu again.
Okay, please.
In the previous slide, like when we were doing the division, I think I'm mostly aligned on like Alexander and Margaret's proposal. But if there is an addition here, instead of having like a 5+1, I would say 5 and 3, like mobile. My take is we have that division of like vertical video versus horizontal video, and most of the vertical video is absorbed in mobile devices. That's a clear distinction. I think when we run the subjective tests, it would be beneficial for us to understand how that consumption is done on the mobile display, as opposed to TVs all the time for vertical video. So yes, I agree that like most of
it goes to here.
Yes, and that should be okay.
Yeah, but this one is still proposal, so it's not final decisions.
Agreed.
Julie, I'm sorry, could you go back to the last slide and clarify that it's the vertical orientation that is of interest in the mobile display? The slide you're on right now. And Balu, would a tablet in vertical orientation satisfy that need? Not in terms of realism, but in terms of the testing?
It might, and I see where you're going with that. Like you want to see more of the artifacts more clearly and vividly in a larger display, and therefore like more than a cell phone and iPad would probably benefit here. And I think that's like a happy medium. I would agree. But however, I think the consumption is significantly changed over the last decade towards mobile, right, at this point. So I think for most viewers, that is more friendly. We could still do the test on a tablet if that works better, and that's the consensus.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
think this is very important issues, which this one need to be determined as soon as possible. Hopefully, we have to do it by in June. Otherwise, we may have problem with the deadline. So definitely, we do not want to have these decisions close to the deadline. So think about it, and hopefully, yeah, I think I need to make announcement to all the proponents to make a decision on this.
Yeah. Till here, we are also considering whether we can add one test, right? But we cannot confirm this now. But we would be trying to check this out really soon, so that we may have an answer about this in, say, 3 weeks or so, right? So this is really not like a firm offer. Like, don't write it in the same way as exactly as for
No.
FDA, right? Because we really need to discuss first, right? It's just a thought, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah.
So the test vectors, we need some test vectors. At the moment, I think the input file format is MP4. And also, if model fail to decode these MP4 files, there is an option to process uncompressed files. But I think for this one, we definitely need some test vectors. And how we send just the
Chulhi, if we specify uncompressed AVI in YUV format, that's what was used in the prior VQEG tests. So we
So
have
this is
test
unique.
vectors already.
This one is a unique format.
It is. It's a
Oh, okay.
specific format. And it's old, it's outdated, but it hasn't changed in many years.
Oh, okay. So what we are going to do with the, I think this is very unlikely, but this will need to be decided before model submissions. If a model fail, put some PBS. I think in the previous case, I think just assigned something like number 3, something like that. So what kind of solution do we have for this very unlikely case, but still I think it might be better to make the decision now.
Chulhi, could you clarify, this isn't failure to read the video because
Well,
the uncompressed file format
well,
should solve that?
as I said, it's very unlikely because this is NL models, not something
Yeah.
like parametric or hybrid. But for any reasons, if the model crash, put some PVS, what can be done?
Personally, I would like to see the number of times the model crashed and have that reported separately from the rest of the data instead of assuming a 3.
Then how can you do the data analysis?
Okay, you have a good point there. It's a very annoying situation for the data analysis. Maybe give it a 3 and report separately. It crashed on X number of PVSs.
Okay.
In the previous validation tests, I don't remember running across this.
Like this. Hopefully this won't happen, but
I hope so.
otherwise it can be very serious headache. So this one, I think we need some I think I think Martin can make some email address for these model submissions.
And Chulhi, do we need to specify platform? Is anybody other than the proponent going to run the model? I think currently the answer is no, and that therefore any hardware that the proponent needs is acceptable.
Yes, I hope that the PC can handle all the models.
Well, not necessarily. Some of them may need Linux instead of Windows or so on. I mean, the operating system may differ. And I've seen some models that like require a GPU card and a very specific operating system. So if we're going to have anyone other than the proponent run, that's an issue that needs to be coordinated well in advance of model submission. And if they're taking just a typical Windows machine, then it doesn't matter.
Okay, so I think this is just, we need this for verifications. So.
Yes, and add to that software requirements. They might need operating system, software, and computer. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so interlace the source. Are you going to allow it or not?
I would propose only allowing interlaced source if it is deinterlaced by separating each field and upsampling the field into frames. I don't think we're terribly interested in deinterlacing algorithms.
Yes, but deinterlacing algorithm still produces some artifact.
Well, exactly, but if you're just upsampling each field into a full frame, then you have half of the resolution vertically, but really no terrible artifacts. I would be equally happy just saying no interlaced. Thank you.
Because I found that this interlaced source, after the interlacings, they produce some kind of slightly different output for some models. So,
Excuse me, Julie.
yes,
Could I make
please.
a comment?
Yes, please.
If the target application, I would say, doesn't include broadcasting, like live broadcasting, for instance, maybe the need for interlaced is not that high. But if the model should also be applicable for broadcasting, especially live, then interlaced is still very much in use and would be needed to be covered.
Yes, that's a valid point. Also, I think this issue should be determined as soon as possible.
Also, another comment. Sorry, there are also in FFmpeg very powerful deinterlacing algorithms that could be used for the purpose of creating a deinterlaced source with a very high quality. I mean, the quality is of course bound by the interlaced source from the beginning, but the deinterlacing algorithms are really powerful.
Yes, but still deinterlacing every deinterlacing algorithm produces some artifact that is substantially different from the coding artifact. So including this one also, I think, can be another factors. So I think we are open to both options, because during the last attempt, I think during the 5 or 6 attempt, we all failed because the NR model performance was not good enough.
I mean, if it face a difficulty because you would need to deinterlace the PVS for showing it to the test person. So the test person will see a deinterlaced video. But then if you let the model run on the interlaced video, there is a discrepancies between what the models are calculating on and what the test subjects have seen. So ideally, you would like to run the models on the same type of PVS as the test subjects have been seen.
Yes, I think these issues we need to decide as soon as possible. Margaret?
Thinking about what Shell just said, and Shell, you've got a very good point there. I have a lot of interlaced source. I agree that interlace is very impactful on broadcasting, but in terms of simplifying the test, I think it would be better to disallow interlacing. It would reduce the scope of what we're dealing with. And nothing in the validation test design mentioned interest in deinterlacing artifacts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think let's say tentatively.
I second this. I think it's a very good suggestion. Yeah.
So test guidance. So we aimed uniform most distributions. Is it good enough? Do you want to add some additional requirement for the HRC design? Any other comments?
Julie, if I may, I would like to specify modern video systems. So we're aiming at something we expect people to see in the future.
Yes, but the HRCs are in the bit rate and codecs. And in the one subjective test, we have over 200. And what I mean here is that their MOS score is kind of evenly distributed, not just the high end, just low end, or just like normal distribution that is not desirable. That's what I meant here.
My apologies. In that case, no, I have no other guidance.
And player issues, what kind of players do you want to have for this kind of test? Any player can be used, or you can write some shell script to do it. 5 seconds, and this sounds like 4 seconds for ratings. And also this player issue is vital one. We have to test before the subjective test. Well, I think I think each proponent may do some research, and if they have any solutions, they can propose one. And schedules. So this is the revised one, model submissions. So candidate HRC design. This is just the proposals. So which can be done either ILG or proponents. And candidate source, which can be done by proponents or ILGs. And then we need to review the source and HRC by all. And if all the source and HRC design is acceptable, then at this point, the ILG, if ILGs participate, they just assign the source to ILG, for example. But I think this is also, we want a full matrix or just random. In that case, I think it's much difficult because we are dealing with 200. I think that maybe then would be very difficult to assign 200 HRC source. I think we need some random assignment in such cases. Full matrix might be a little bit different. Full matrix might be easier to assign source. And then we need to test the PVS generation and analysis. Generation should be done by proponents. And analysis should be done by whole. No, I think this is correct. Review is fine. And then this generated PVS should be reviewed by all. Then at this point, you can start a subjective test. And then after 1 month, objective data submissions. So do I miss any important item here? Any comments? Okay, so we can come back to this schedule again. So we need to decide this one fast. Also this one too. This one, I think, also, I think once we have all the proponent, I think we can make this decision very easily. This one is okay. And this one also need to be confirmed by all proponents as soon as possible. This one is not that urgent, but has to be. And then we have to review the test plans so to find out if we miss anything important. And any other business, any other items we need to consider? I think Margaret just said something here. Yes, this one. So I think it is a source. With camera impairment, there will be PVS. So I think we generally agree that any proponent or ILGs, they can submit candidate source or PVS. But there is no guarantee that they will be used in the validations. And the decision to use candidate source or PVS will be determined after model submissions. So for this one, I think it's kind of tricky. So Yanis said no recent cameras produce videos less than 1 megabps. So what happens if some proponent submit to some source video with camera impairment using old camcorder, something like that? Also, these days, they can be some body cam or very low quality cameras. So what kind of range are we looking? Yes, please.
Chulhi, I have an issue I'd like to add to your TBD list. As I mentioned at our last meeting, I would like to openly distribute my data set. And that means I would like all of the sources that are in my data set to be ones that I can distribute on CDVL.
Yes.
So certainly all of my sources will fall into that category, but that might not be the case for other people. And if there's any other lab that's wanting to distribute their data set openly, they will have similar restrictions. Thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, in previous competitions, of course, especially in the domain of speech quality, right? There was always this term model breaker being used, right? Of course, it would be suboptimal if, say, one proponent suggests sources for which are really awkward, and for their model, basically, you know, they are not a problem because they have included those in the pre-training, right? So going back to the previous topic that you had on the list, Chulhi there, right? I mean, mentioned previously by Margaret. There's of course this possibility that, you know, participants may be suggesting sources which have specific artifacts which they know they can handle, but no one else probably can because they're so awkward, right? So it's a bit of a tricky thing with these sources, I find.
So I think that's why we have these routines. So if some source, candidate source, final source for validation test is not acceptable, then a proponent may object to accepting those source.
Okay, I see. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. No, I got what you all meant to be included there. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Actually, question, this is Balu. Is there a requirement that like the sources be dedicated for this SG and not be public?
Well, if the source, if you use a source which is not open to publics, then you have limitation sharing your data later. So
yeah, my question is inverse of that. Like, so would the requirement here actually call out non-public data sets only? Or is it okay to have the content be public before being considered here?
no, I think we have an option to use public data or non-public data. And hopefully, even the non-public data, we hope that the data can be used for other purpose, at least among proponent and ILGs. Without that, if you use source, which can be used just for this project, after this ones, all the data set will be lost because it was not clear. This happened many times in the previous project. So we just, at the time, we were just happy to have a source. So we used all the available source, and later we found that it is very tricky to use the data for other purposes. Technically, we are not allowed to use the data for other purposes. So I think hopefully that as for example, NTIA, they plan to publish all the subjective data, then I think it might be better their test to use only a public source. And some other proponent may use source, but that source should be available at least for the proponents because they have to do subjective test. And I hope that the source can be reused after this project, at least by the proponent and ILGs. So I think that issue still need to be discussed.
Yeah, that is clear. Thank you.
Yeah, I have another question. Sorry, I'm not sure we addressed this so far, but maybe we need to talk about it at some point. People will be submitting their models, right? And then they will be basically providing the scores for the validation data sets, right? Do we plan for some formal score verification, right? So that we can be sure that the scores obtained really correspond to the models submitted? In Peanuts, we were really super keen on that, and I'm not sure we perfectly did it, but you know, we had a detailed procedure to be described there.
You mean the verification of objective data, right?
Exactly. So of the, you know, once all the tests are run and then, you know, you get the model scores, or is someone else running the submitted models on those?
Okay, then. That has been done in all other projects, so during the same time, I guess.
Thank you for mentioning that, Alex, that we should keep that in mind when discussing criteria needed to make the models run for submission.
Yeah, at the time in the Peanuts projects, we had this requirement specification, right? Maybe it was maybe a bit too expansive, basically, how we wrote it at the time. But maybe something small, which really specifies these things, I think would be really good.
Okay, so that's a very good point. Thank you. So it looks like we have about almost the time is up. So any other comments? So possibly we may have, if the YouTube can participate as proponent, we may have now 10 subjective tests, right? Okay, so I think its time is almost done. So I'll send out this PPT to all the proponents so they can review the document. Hopefully that they can participate tomorrow. Also, I think we may need some additional discussion to solve some remaining issues. Okay, so any other questions or comments? Okay, then thank you very much. So Yanis, I think you can take over from here. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Shirley. Yanis is not in the room, but but thank you. We end your session now, and we break for lunch. And according to the schedule, we should be back here in an hour, I guess. I think it was. Let me double check. Yes. But we will also need our guides oh, we have Cosmin here. Okay, thank you. Yeah, please stop the recording. Okay, so we are